Hi, I'm Jack. For a long time now, I've thought about doing a video essay for The Good Place and my disappointment with it as a whole. I just wasn't sure what angle to take. I could see what was broken, but I wasn't quite sure how I wanted it to be fixed. I surely could have if I had felt motivated to write fanfiction about it, but tragically, I do not want to fuck any of the characters, so I don't have any incentive to write fanfiction. I've known for quite some time that I would eventually make a video about it, but I shelved it until I finally watched The Amazing Digital Circus. Things began to click into place. The Amazing Digital Circus works as a perfect foil for The Good Place in multiple ways. One thing it highlighted for me is that I've been dishonest with myself about where I fell off with The Good Place. Well, we'll back up in a bit. But I used to cite my disconnect as the series snooze finale. I mean, snooze fest. I mean series finale. And then, as I got deeper in conversations with people about the show, I would cite it as the moment that the hot air balloon actually worked, and when it was confirmed for us in canon that The Good Place actually existed. But the more I've had time to pause and reflect, I remember the first time I went, oh, Britta's in this? When the humans taught Michael how to fear his own death. Now, I'm not gonna start right there. I'm gonna go a little bit in order here, and I'm just gonna, obviously, right off the bat, there are spoilers for the entirety of both shows, except for episode 9 of The Amazing Digital Circus, which is not out yet aside from the leaks, but we are all ignoring that. There will be no, I don't seek out spoilers of the episode, there will be none in here, but if you haven't seen The Good Place and you haven't seen The Amazing Digital Circus, I would recommend that you watch at least one of those shows, if not both, but whichever one you feel more drawn to. Ultimately, if you reach a point where you're like, actually, maybe I should watch one of these shows, I would recommend that you do so. Other than that, it makes the most sense to just start with the beginning of each show. Hi, it's Jack from the future. I'm here with a few updates and brand new contact lenses, so don't get used to this for the rest of the video. You are going to see a massive glare in my glasses for the rest of the video, but for right now, and for any time that I clip in this nice little outfit, you will be spared of that. So it is now 3 weeks-ish after I wrote and filmed all of this essay. I still haven't seen the last act, but I'm about to tomorrow. The perfectionist in me almost wants to give up on this upload because I couldn't— ooh, this is perfect. The perfectionist in me kind of wants to give up on uploading this, but I've put way too much work into this to just do that. Definitely by the time I'm posting this, the last act will be out. It's already out now. I really wanted this to get out before the last act, but it didn't. I'm sure that all of my commentary still stands, but we'll see where certain parts lead, and if I'm, like, grievously wrong about anything that happened in canon. Right, okay, so if anything I say about The Good Place pisses you off, be sure to leave very lengthy comments about it. And I just want to say, like, as I go through the edits, and as I pull footage and stuff, I made a lot of jokes where I was just glazing Ted Danson as, like, carrying the whole show, but to be, like, perfectly frank, Jamila Jamil also knocked it out of the fucking park. I apologize. I forgot how, like, truly brilliant of a comedic actress that she is. I really liked her work. You know, there's no disrespect to the actors in this show at all, and I just feel like saying that because there's gonna be parts of this essay that tear into this show, and there's parts where I do go a little bit too soft, in my opinion. Anyway, you'll be seeing me again with the contact lenses instead of the glasses because I just got those in the mail this morning. So that's something to look forward to on my channel as well. If when we switch back, if you notice how irritating that glare is in my glasses, that's your sign to subscribe because I have contacts now. So that won't be happening again for a long time. Both of these shows start by wanting you to feel that something is uneasy beneath the shiny exterior of their respective existential dystopias. Eleanor arrives to the afterlife in a waiting room with words on the wall across from her that say, "Welcome, everything is fine." This is a very recognizable red flag, signifying that everything is, in fact, not fine. When somebody tells you, "I'm fine," that's kind of the universal signal that something is very wrong, and they are barely masking the fact that it's wrong. And the more that somebody emphasizes the word fine, "I'm fine," the more you are meant to distrust them. That is what is at play in this first shot in The Good Place, and it works incredibly well. It's one of the more talked about parts of the show and the symbolism in the show and the way that it foreshadows. This is a very clever piece of environmental storytelling, and I find that it works really well. I really don't have any issues with it. The Amazing Digital Circus begins with a theme song. It's not a real theme song that recurs in the other episodes, but you don't. I'm gonna speak like you've seen it. The pilot of The Amazing Digital Circus begins with a theme song, and at first glance, it's very clear why so many parents just assume that it's a children's show. But if you watch not even 3 minutes in, you would see the very obvious cues that it is not, in fact, a children's show. Just before Pomni interrupts the song by spawning in, we are hit with the lyric, "Day after day after day after day after day we fly past the sun and the moon and we don't know why." And during the repetition, the animation also repeats on a loop as if it were a glitch. And when Bubble and Caine fly towards you, that is when we hear "we don't know why." This sets up a sense of foreboding before we even get to meet the main character. The existential dread makes itself clear. It says, these characters are stuck here on repeat over and over and over again, and they have no idea why. I think it also works incredibly well. I think both of these shows did a good job in this area, and I think that both shows get, 57 Good Place points for that. Now, the first thing that gave me the ick about The Good Place was the minced oath thing. And obviously I understand the underlying mechanic. It was a show on broadcast television, and so they couldn't just be cussing all over the place, but they still wanted to make the show feel grown up. However, I feel that the way they went about this had the opposite effect and ends up infantilizing the audience.
Holy mother forking shirt balls.
Mother trucker, dude. That hurt like a butt cheek on a stick.
Grown adults using minced oaths like fork and shirt is incredibly jarring. For me, the fork and shirt of it all really sets the tone of the maturity of the show. This is about to be morality for dummies. The Amazing Digital Circus, on the other hand, does an excellent job at setting the tone of maturity for the show. The work trusts its audience to be grown up. And there are other ways that the show does this, but I specifically want to compare the swearing, since both shows tackle censorship in a different way. In The Amazing Digital Circus, characters get in-canon censor bars and sounds that pop up when they cut. Their words are not altered as they leave their mouths. They are simply covered up. But you can still hear the beginning and ending letters of the curse words. You can very clearly hear that Pomni says bitch. You can very clearly hear when Zooble calls Jax a fucking asshole. They aren't mincing oaths because they're in The Good Place. Caine's family-friendly programming will not let those words through. It's not framed as a sin to curse, it's simply a limitation of the parameters of Caine's program. The censors themselves are a part of the existential dread of being trapped in a sanitized place as a fully grown adult with a libido. Okay, so in The Good Place, right? We're all in the afterlife. The regular rules of human existence don't apply. The show does its best to show off how, wacky the good and bad place are. And the metaphysical realm of the afterlife in general. And I'm really just gonna rip into the show for a second. The best scene for displaying this attempt at absurdity is the scene where the neighborhood breaks, where Michael, constructs it to break, and, it's, aggressively cringe. I'm sorry. I feel belittled that you think that I think this is any kind of hellish absurdity. I swear to God, it's like when writing this scene, they consulted a 5-year-old and they asked the 5-year-old, hey, what's the craziest, most random thing you can think of? And the child was like, a giant weighty bug. And they were like, oh, anything else? And they're like, a giant giraffe that's so big and stripy suits. It's like -1 cule away from reality. You know what I mean? And to go on, because there's so much that this show attempts to do to tell you that it is wacky. And one of those things is that Michael's true form is a giant fire squid. We never get to see the squid.
I think I speak for everyone here when I say, I really have to see this.
Okay. First of all, I don't think squid is lol random enough. I don't think, I get it. I understand that there's, that pop culture theory or whatever that cephalopods are from outer space, but I just think that's really unimaginative thinking. It's not wacky enough for me that he's a squid, much less a fire squid. It's just a little bit too Earth-centric in my opinion. But the biggest sin is that they never show it to us. They tease it all the time, and Michael is like embarrassed that he's a fire squid, and it's like, bro.
You guys will never look at me the same way again. I won't just be Michael. I'll be some disgusting mass of burning tentacles. Do you really want to be friends with something like that?
Yes, I keep saying.
And then the other, there's that one demon where we see his true form and he's just like a lava monster, and it's like, okay, so that's two fire things, like...
Two boy things.
Cool. We get it. Hell. Alright, we get it. It's fire. The bad place is Dante's Inferno. Whoop-de-doo. How creative. And I'm sorry, but this scene is just unforgivable to me.
It's actually not hot sauce. It's envy. Or the concept of envy. It's really good at Mexican food. It gives it a little kick.
I know you know that's a bottle of Cholula. That is a bottle of Cholula. That it is. And it's like, I get it, like, you know, what you have on hand, but what are we talking about here? Like, this isn't an NBC show. You couldn't slap a label on it that said envy. It literally says Cholula. Do you know why I have this? Do you know why I have this on hand? It's because I'm a human. I'm not the almighty judge of all of human beings who should have the knowledge of more of humanity than using Cholula to give Mexican food a little kick. You can call it envy all you want. Props department, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? You insult me. I can't suspend my disbelief. At least choose like a funny hot sauce. I know, it's nitpicky, I know, but it just makes me cringe every single time. I do like the International Hole of Pancakes. I think it's probably the most successful that the show gets with being wacky.
I could not disagree with this panel more.
In The Good Place, the absurdity is mostly just random as funny gags. It feels like when an author tries to like invent a sport. The Good Place shows us visual absurdity with things like the flying dog when they go to the Good Place in the hot air balloon, the stripy suits, that one moment with like Tahani's face going different colors outside of like the sinkhole. Derek has wind chimes where his dick should be. Ah, ha 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 ha. So silly, funny, goofy, funny. And these moments of absurdity are pretty much just distilled and separated from the actual storyline. Like, you could take out a lot of these wacky elements and you would still have the storyline. Like, it really wouldn't impact anything that's going on. It's all just set dressing. It's all just like, oh, we got a fountain full of clam chowder. Haha. So wacky and silly. Oh, butthole spiders. Oh. But in the Amazing Digital Circus, not only does absurdity exist around every corner, but it's inextricable from the plot in a lot of ways. The world itself is a cartoon. Everyone is cartoon characters. They're trapped in kind of what feels like a jumpstart game, like an old CD-ROM, probably floppy disk, you know, because it was like 94. Their bodies are canonically not human, and it affects what drives the characters. Jax abuses cartoon physics all the time, Kinger conjures things, and Zooble is plagued by having a body that's literally made out of Zillow parts. The cube collisions are a running gag used for 2 separate plot points, at least, and furthermore, the absurdity that is played for laughs is just simply funnier. There really are like countless examples that I could use, but I'm gonna wrap up this section with the absurdity of each show's version of dying, finally dying. Again, The Bad Place is clearly based on the Christian concept of hell as co-opted from Dante's Inferno, from the Divine Comedy. The death mechanic in this storyline is eternal damnation. They have throwaway lines about penis flattening, and they have jokes about, oh, the bear has 2 mouths, or like 4 mouths, or bees with teeth. Sure. And it's obviously supposed to evoke fear in these characters. They must be motivated to avoid eternal conscious torment. But as the audience myself, it's hard to emotionally invest in that fear. especially when I know how structurally tied it is to fire and brimstone Baptist Christianity. It really just is lifted right from the Bible. It breaks my suspension of disbelief because I'm like, okay, why try and act like this is like a new, different afterlife? In the Amazing Digital Circus, death is abstraction. We know a little about it. We are thrown into the story just after Kaufmo has abstracted already. He's basically a corrupted file. He's actively dangerous to the circus because he could make other things glitch. He didn't abstract because he did bad things. If you could abstract for doing bad things, Jax would have been abstracted already. Abstraction isn't a punishment. It's something that could happen to anyone. Anyone if they can't pull themselves together in time for it to happen to them. And that reflects a very real world fear. Anybody could become mentally broken down to the point of extreme hardship, ruin, or losing yourself. And in the circus, that manifests physically. And when Caine sends them to the cellar, it's not malicious, it's not a punishment, it's containment. We don't know what happens in the cellar because Caine never elaborates, and so the other characters don't know. We have no idea how much is left of the original person, or if there's anything left at all. We can presume they'll never be released, never be reverted back, and that they are just sandboxed forever. And again, in lieu of seeing the finale yet, this lack of information creates a palpable fear for the characters and suspense for the audience. And because it's so analogous to real-world fear, the emotional investment is a lot stronger. It's a lot easier to fear something as common as reaching a mental breaking point than it is to distantly fear some post-mortem, like, over-the-top fire and brimstone bodily punishment on your physical body that you still have after death. I don't know. I'll get more into the character comparisons in a little bit, but I wanted to touch on how each show treats parental trauma, specifically maternal trauma. The thing about The Good Place is that there are at least 3 characters whose... What do I mean at least 3? There's only 4 humans. All of their bad traits are explained by the bad relationship they had with their parents, right? Okay, very relatable thing. But there's a big difference in the way that The Good Place and the Amazing Digital Circus treat maternal trauma. I'm definitely going to bring this up again. Eleanor's dysfunctional relationship to her mother is frequently framed as something that Eleanor is supposed to just get over and forgive in order to become a better person.
A police officer came to my home.
That police officer was an actor. She faked her death, moved to Nevada, and reinvented herself as Diana Tremaine.
Yes, it sucks that her mom did that to her, but she has to just suck it up and just be a good person.
Whatever you're feeling, remember, this is not about you.
There's this scene where she brings up her parents' divorce, and she explicitly says out loud,
That trauma, it can explain away a lot of behavior.
which Vicky, who is playing the role of real Eleanor, brags about how, well, you know, humble brags about how she didn't have parents but was still such a good person. And I call it a brag not because that's the reality of a situation like that, but because Vicky is a demon playing a role. You know, the whole point of this is to make Eleanor feel insecure, which works, but the other thing about that is that Eleanor just kind of said out loud that her trauma is something she uses to explain her bad behavior. And that honestly seems to be what the show wants us to take away from that. There's a similar theme when it comes to Tahani's parents, who simply have not supported her nearly as well as her sister. And yet it's put on Tahani to just forgive them. Yes, her parents are awful to her. They're extremely neglectful to her. And yet it's Tahani's goodness test to not want to confront them. That's the reason she fails her goodness test. She still needs her parents' warmth. She needs to understand why they treated her that way. And that need is what makes her a bad person. And I think in The Good Place, the most egregious example of this is the heart-wrenching scene, probably the only scene in the entire show that makes me tear up and has made me cry. And that's the scene where Eleanor witnesses her mother being a better mother than she was to her. This is a beautiful scene. It's an extremely relatable feeling for some people. And it's extremely evocative the way that Kristen Bell plays this scene. This is a feeling that is rarely explored in media, and to have it distilled down into such a concise sentence as,
If Donna Shellstrop has truly changed, then that means she was always capable of change. But
I just wasn't worth changing for.
Is beautiful. In my opinion, probably the most beautiful moment of the entire series. And the reason why it sucks so bad is that it's literally played to emotionally manipulate us. That's it. We're just supposed to care more about Eleanor because we see her pain. We're supposed to be like, oh, that's why she's such a bad person. And yet, once again, it's up to Eleanor to deal with that. Eleanor is rarely offered more empathy than a pat on the back, really.
I know as your self-appointed father figure, I'm supposed to say something comforting here. But I'm kind of stumped.
Bofa, these nuts.
Anytime that she expresses her trauma, it's either laughed off or given a brief cursory acknowledgement, and ultimately she's supposed to just deal with it. There's no deeper exploration about the concept of familial trauma and the way that that is passed down throughout generations. It's simply, I'm mad at my mommy, and that made me such a bad person that I deserve hell. That's the message. That's the message. Ultimately, these emotional wounds that were inflicted on her stacked the moral cards against her favor. She had nothing to do with that, which is part of the fundamental unfairness of the point system. But we'll get to the point system. In comparison, there's only one character in the Amazing Digital Circus who ever opens up about their family. In episode 5, during Zooble's adventure, Ragatha opens up a little bit about her upbringing, and she really only has like a throwaway line about her mom, you know, berating and emotional abuse, and the rest of what we know from that is up to what we can read off her character and the way that she acts. Her people-pleasing tendencies are often explained away as a result of her relationship with her mother, and I think that's a very realistic takeaway, because it is very realistic. Then in episode 8, when Caine is torturing everybody, his torture for Ragatha manifests as a family dinner with her mother looming over her, and it's a strictly visual experience, obviously aside from the score, which is emotionally evocative, but we really don't need to be told the extent of Ragatha's maternal trauma for us to feel it, and for us to understand how much it shaped her as a person. And more than that, it's important. It's given the weight that it needs. It doesn't explain Ragatha having bad behavior, because her being a little bit of a people pleaser is not bad behavior. It's a coping mechanism. The traumas that the humans have in the Amazing Digital Circus are important because they inform what could potentially cause a character to abstract. And even in Jax's case, we know nothing about his life in the macroverse, and it doesn't matter. He's a huge dick to everyone, and it truly does not matter what his trauma is. There is nothing that you can tell me that has been done to this rabbit that excuses any of the ways that he copes with it. And I would feel the same for Eleanor if I took her cartoonish evil seriously, but I can't. And I'll get down to that later. The plot twist. You know it. You love it. You loved it. Everybody loved it. It was the main thing that you would talk about when you were, like, talking up the show to somebody. You'd be like, oh, there's a huge plot twist. You just have to get to the plot twist. It gets so good afterward. The thing that always bothered me about it is it doesn't make any sense. Like, in the internal logic of the show, you know? It doesn't follow. Michael's whole goal with this neighborhood is to pitch a new idea for torture, and so the stakes are incredibly high. If he fails this experiment, he will be fired. He will be sent to the Eternal Shriek. So tell me why he is risking this entire existence on this half-baked plot line that he devised in this neighborhood. His whole thing is he's trying to show off how creative he is in psychologically tormenting these humans by setting up plot beats and, like, having them act them out. It just really doesn't make any sense. He sets up a plot point that can do nothing except force a point of no return. The premise is that the humans have to squabble amongst themselves, deciding who gets to go to the bad place, or, you know, who has to go to the bad place and who should stay. There's no way that Michael could have thought that he could draw that out for long enough for it to be, like, a source of torture for them, And then what? Like, I know that Bomba John had, like, some sort of, like, loophole that would have tied everything up, but that was also really lazy. And, like, it was lazy in the text of the show as well. Like, it was lazy within the canon of the show. It was lazy in Michael's plot. And it just doesn't make any sense how he could be just such this powerful being with this idea to psychologically torture people for eternity, and he would just drop the ball in this massive way. It just doesn't make sense. And God bless, Ted ate the scene so hard that I hardly care. I mean, obviously I still noticed the glaring plot hole, but I didn't really care about it as much, and I was still committed to giving the show an earnest shot. When Eleanor calls out Michael, he does a cartoonishly evil laugh and goes into a legitimate villain monologue. He is an all-powerful demon who has been torturing humans for millennia, and he is suddenly thwarted by one random human, which is only believable because Ted Danson commands your suspension of disbelief on charisma alone. The thing is, Michael didn't have to be mad about that. He didn't have to do a villain monologue. He could just snap his fingers and reset the timeline, as he then proceeds to do.
Yeah, basic.
For, frankly, way too long of a gag that I think ultimately does not really serve the narrative as strongly as it wants to. Let's compare this to Caine's plot twist setup in Beach Day. Caine constructs an elaborate ruse, starting by telling the gang that he is out getting ingredients for his milk and cigarette casserole. The cast are then duped by an NPC who claims that he is also a human and that he knows the way to get out of the circus. Similar to The Good Place, the audience are meant to wonder how legitimate this is. The cast are presented with a choice that has much more realistic stakes, because the consequence of the exit being fake might just be permanent deletion. Just like Eleanor, Jax figures it out before the rest of the cast. When Jax confronts Caine about being a liar, Caine doesn't respond with villainous mania. He responds with genuine confusion, because he truly thought that the humans did not really want to leave.
I didn't put too much thought into that one, cause I knew you'd never pick it. So I left that up to Bubble.
I made it take you to Shrimp Town.
Yeah, it was gonna take you to Shrimp Town.
He thinks their desire for an exit is simply a desire for an immersive adventure about an exit. He truly has no ability to let them leave, in my opinion. Now, these events happen at very different times in their respective narratives. I get that. And Caine and Michael have very different motives in these situations. But what bothers me the most about this one, in The Good Place, is just the lack of internal logic. Like, it really sucked. Like, I can look back and admit that right now. Like, shock value aside, looking back and watching it back, it really does not make sense how he would risk so much, and in front of Sean, who is the king of hell. It just is, I'm sorry, it's not a good, it was sensational, I'll give it that. Michael's midlife crisis. Now, I mentioned this one at the top of the script for a reason. It was a huge disappointment for me. It was cringe the whole time, and not in the way that the creators wanted me to think so, I suspect. The humans have thwarted Michael multiple times by now, and he has decided to be on their side because he's at risk of being fired, which is fine. But he can't really commit to helping them because he doesn't care about the well-being of the humans. So what do they do to fix this? Do they lean into his innate fascination with humans and teach him how to appreciate them in their context? No, nothing that interesting. They simply ask Michael to imagine what happens once he's fired.
Think about that for a second.
Okay, I'll think about that. No. Me?
Apparently, he has never thought of this one time in his eternal existence, despite knowing exactly what's going to happen to him.
I think you're going to be retired, eliminated from existence, and burned on the surface of a billion suns.
And all it takes is comparing that to human death in order for Michael to care about being good all of a sudden. And is it funny that Michael goes through a stereotypically human American white male midlife crisis? No.
I don't eat anything.
She's perfect.
But it's once again a moment that is not believable by the internal logic of the show. It's not funny enough to make up for it, and I'll rant about it a little bit more later. The Amazing Digital Circus, on the other hand, doesn't require anybody to stick to a moral code for their salvation. Jax isn't in danger of abstracting by being mean. As far as we know in the show so far, abstraction doesn't have anything to do with how good or bad of a person somebody is. It is simply a result of somebody's inability to continue to cope with the world that they're stuck in. It is not a punishment that can be negotiated. It is a consequence of breaking the code of the world. The characters in the show are not motivated to be good in order to avoid abstraction. They're motivated to be good out of a human desire for connection, and out of empathy for being in the same fucked up situation. And honestly, you could take it one step further. You could say that the characters being nice to each other is, in a way, motivated by fear of abstraction, but not fear of their own abstraction. Ragatha isn't nice to people because she thinks that being mean will make her abstract. She is nice to people because she wants to avoid her friends abstracting. It's not a fear of punishment. It's empathy. Nihilism is a funny thing. I remember the first time I heard about it. It was in a song by the classic Crime called The Happy Nihilist, and as a young Christian, I came away thinking that nihilism was silly. But there was still something in me that, wondered about it. The song is about an atheist. It's a straw man 100% of the way. The narrator thinks that believing in God and reading books are mutually exclusive, that books disprove God, because that's the straw man that Christians believe in. That, first of all, that if you're an atheist, that's the same thing as being a nihilist. And second, that knowledge is your God. And I've always thought that's very telling. He doesn't believe in God, and so he doesn't believe in absolute truth. Therefore, happiness isn't real. And because happiness isn't real, nothing matters. In the chorus of the song, the narrator openly regrets not trusting anyone else but himself. Implicitly, he wishes that he could trust in Jesus, because only Jesus can give your life meaning. This is what Christians mostly believe about atheism, is that you will inevitably just become depressed and act like nothing matters. It's viewed as an immature rebellion against God, an attempt to do all the sin that you ever wanted to do and still come up empty-handed, still feel that emptiness inside after you've gone and done all these horrible little sins that you always wanted to do. And The Good Place's portrayal of nihilism is equally sophomoric. While Christians predictably conflate atheism with nihilism, The Good Place at least keeps the term separate and specified away from monotheistic belief. But that's about as much as it gets right. The rest of it might as well just be God's Not Dead, the sitcom. When Chidi becomes nihilistic, this is portrayed with moments born straight out of a Christian mother's parable. He combines foods that shouldn't be combined because it's lol random and nothing matters. He tells his students to jump up their own butts.
Put the peeps in the chili pot and add the M&Ms. The actual ethical system that you should all follow is nihilism. The world is empty. There is no point to anything, and you're just gonna die. And you all can jump up your own butts.
He tears his shirt off and walks through the sprinklers. His nihilism is a temporary phase, a tantrum that he throws until he just accepts that the points are absolute. The motivation for being a good person is, once again, fear of hell. That is what this philosophically genius show thinks about nihilism. If you don't know, nihilism isn't just nothing matters, so everything sucks, and I get to be a bad person. Nihilism can lead people to a negative mindset. Think of like a young Reddit atheist, but it often is a positive or just neutral mindset. If life has no inherent meaning, then life has the meaning that you choose to give it. You choose to care about others, and that then informs what matters in life to you. If reality is that we're all here by accident, any moral responsibility that we have is to make life suck less for the people around us. And you can choose to do bad things like Jax. You can choose to be a bad person, but there are still consequences even if those consequences aren't cosmic. The consequence for Jax is that he's isolated. He is given many opportunities to let people in, because everyone in the circus is going through the same situation. He doesn't choose to be a bad person because he is nihilistic. He chooses to be a bad person because that's his personality. I've met Christian men who act like Jax. You don't need nihilism to be an antisocial asshole. In this next part of the video, I'm going to be diving into some character comparisons to explore the different ways that either show handles certain character traits and certain narrative decisions. Initially, I was going to compare a few characters to each other, but since they're not one-to-one character comparisons, I managed to be able to kind of match everybody up with at least somebody. It would be tempting to start off by comparing the protagonist directly, but I'm not comparing story structure with this one. Eleanor is a lot more comparable to Jax than Pomni in terms of archetype. And no, I don't mean she's the funny one. Both Eleanor and Jax are terrible people. You're not supposed to like them. Kinda. The problem with Eleanor is that she's not a realistic version of this trope. She's selfish in an unrealistic way. Not only that, but a lot of her negative traits are simply framed as negative because she's being unladylike as a woman, and also distinctly through a Christocentric moral framework. Eleanor is selfish, not just in big ways, but in really inconsequential ways, like wanting to drink tequila and pass out on her vibrator as a fun thing to do for the night. A little lewd? Sure, but that's not what the show really wants you to think. The show wants you to think, oh, she'll get better one day, she'll get more ladylike one day. The narrative wants her to be dislikable through those little quirks, like stuffing shrimp in her bra. It's meant to be relatable, but it's those relatable parts that we, the audience, are meant to see and go, oh, maybe I should change, just like Eleanor. And in a larger way, like I said before, the show wants us to think that her mother's emotional neglect is Eleanor's responsibility. Mostly, it's Eleanor's fault that she just didn't deal with it in a healthy way. Never mind the fact that she never really had friends that sat with her and actually helped her improve her life. Nobody in her life, as far as we can tell, encouraged her to go to therapy for anything. She is randomly, cartoonishly a jerk at random times for random reasons. But honestly, gag me. She likes to cuss. God literally forbid. She is outwardly expressive about her sexuality. She's unladylike. She likes to eat food and drink alcohol. And those things are selfish and bad. These are character traits that are placed right alongside with her cartoonish moments of evil, and we're supposed to see all of them as bad things about her. Jax we are not supposed to relate with in the same sense. Jax is meant to be potentially as redeemable as the rest of the cast, although, I don't think he is. According to Gooseworks, he's not supposed to be redeemable. I don't think that he is. But he is at least as relatable as the rest of the cast. And that's very unfortunate. In fact, I feel like one of the reasons why I viscerally hate that rabbit so much is because of the things that I see in him that I have done in the past. And that is what fuels my frustration with him. I see exactly where he's coming from, and I see where I chose to do better. He is deeply, deeply flawed in a way that makes sense based on trauma that we don't even really have fully confirmed. Just like Eleanor, the narrative wants Jax to be unlikable. We are supposed to be disgusted with his callous lack of empathy, and we're supposed to recognize it as a terrible coping mechanism for missing his abstracted friends and trying not to abstract himself, because he thinks that if he takes things too seriously, he will abstract. Ironically, in my opinion, the cartoon character, who's also in canon a cartoon himself, is a more believable asshole than Eleanor, who is fully human the whole time. And maybe that's because I've never met an Eleanor. On the other hand, I've met dozens of Jaxes. You've probably met dozens of Jaxes. You're not supposed to like him. The narrative does not root for him, and yet fans desperately root for his improvement. Jax is so incredibly unlikable and so relatable to so many people because he's realistic. It's more than a surface level Eleanor liking shrimp and people saying she's just like me for real. Like, it's very surface the way that Eleanor is relatable, but Jax feels like an actual human that is relatable in ways that you don't want to be relatable. Both his major and minor character flaws are consistent with him being a bad person. Even the minor detail that he steals keys. We find this out when he non-consensually opens his friend Kaufmo's bedroom door. This is a minor detail, but it's an incredibly immoral thing, and it shows that he doesn't care about consent or privacy. It's also not just a one-off gag about, oh, look how terrible this guy is. It's a consistent part of his character that he snags keys and that he opens people's doors without their permission. It's a consistent part of his character and it's still a minor enough detail a casual viewer might not even catch on to it. Nobody really sits down to try to lecture Jax on morality and why he should be a better person, because he's an adult and they're all adults and they're not gonna sit and talk to him like he's a little kid. They cut to the chase, tell him to be nice, and when he doesn't do that, they stonewall him. They put up boundaries with him because he's an adult. He knows that what he's doing is wrong. He knows that what he's doing hurts other people. He has told them time and time again he does not care. And it doesn't matter that he actually does care, because it's the way that he deals with that's the problem. Even the characters, and especially Zooble, understand why Jax is the way he is, and they keep offering him olive branches.
Hey. That includes you too. Listen, we're not gonna have you wandering off alone somewhere and abstracting or something. You're a pain in the ass, but you're still one of us.
But he just doesn't accept.
You think I'm capable of abstracting?
They all desperately wish he would adopt better coping mechanisms, but he's not ready to be part of the community yet.
If I do still have problems, I talk about them with the people I trust.
Good thing I don't have any problems, then.
Where are you going?
Anywhere you losers won't yap my ear off.
I can't relate to Eleanor, and I can't really hate her either. I can be annoyed with her, but I can't be bothered enough to hate her, because there's nothing in her that evokes a realistically detestable human. And before I move on from this section, I just wanted to compare Jax with another character. Initially, I was going to leave out the batch of humans that come when Eleanor is architect, but the way Simone reacts to the good place is exactly the way that Jax treats the circus.
Simone, everything okay?
Yeah. Well, no. Well, actually, it doesn't matter. None of this is real.
Eleanor! Look what my brain did!
I'm in a coma, none of this is real.
You know none of this is real, right? All we are now is a bunch of cartoon characters. So what's the point of pretending we're not?
They both cope by acting like nothing is real, and they can do whatever they want. The glaring difference is that for Jax, this is a defining character trait, something that episode by episode we hope that he's going to break through. It explains why he's so detestable. For Simone, this character flaw is remedied with one conversation about solipsism.
Dude!
What? It's not real. None of this matters. Leave that on your nose for the rest of time.
Pow.
Fine. Point sort of taken.
Why not treat them better, just in case they're real? I mean, what do you have to lose?
Okay.
We're done here, it's a wrap.
This is a running theme in the show. Every character flaw in this show could be fixed by preaching at them. Now I'd like to talk about the existential wet blanket in the room. Heaven exists. Hooray. Right? This, I think, was the final straw for me. Maybe not the final one, but this is where I heavily disconnected. The moment that the good place is confirmed to exist. Honestly, the entire show past this point made me really upset that I ever invested time into it. I trusted the process, and I shouldn't have. I was really hoping for that hot air balloon to be fake, just like the train to hell. I was expecting it. At every moment during that scene, I was like, this is it? They're gonna find out that the good place isn't even real. And Michael doesn't even know that either. They're about to be faced with the entropy of the universe, and the fact that there are just some evil beings out there that want to justify torturing humans. Like, we're gonna get into something more cosmic. We're gonna get into something more sci-fi. But no, they took us to heaven. The impregnable system of the universe's morality allows them to sneak, unauthorized, out of the gates of hell, and eventually petition their way into heaven. It's disappointing. It's lackluster. They had such a promising premise. They had the opportunity for a real plot twist that would have mirrored and retroactively justified the train plot twist to me, but no, they just confirmed that heaven is real. How exciting. Doug Forcett was right about the afterlife being basically the Bible with the serial numbers filed off. Now, as I'm writing this, the last act of the Amazing Digital Circus has not been officially released. I mean, it has in one country, but I don't know why I would go run out there and find spoilers and spoil it for myself and then act like a little bitch and blame Gooseworks for it. That's just not me. So as of this moment, we don't know what's actually going to happen in the finale of the show. A popular fan theory, and one that I think makes the most sense in congruence with canon, is the copy theory. The copy theory being that the humans in the Amazing Digital Circus had their brains scanned and uploaded into Caine's program. Their human bodies either got up and walked away or were, whatever happened to them. But that the characters in the digital circus are simply copies of their own mind files. There is no body to get back to. There are no stasis pods waiting for them. There is no exit. The macroverse is inaccessible. Caine's exit door is fake, explicitly only a prop to give the humans what he thought they wanted, a simulation of an exit door. There is no exit, only annihilation. If it were possible to leave the circus, it would most likely mean deletion. This would force the characters to coexist, to finally reckon with their fate, and learn how to live with each other, rather than individually repressing their own hope of one day leaving, and being stuck with the anxiety of never knowing if they can. Maybe they could find ways to communicate their psychological needs to Caine and bring him into the in-group, because he's just as real as they are. It would be a tragically beautiful, beautifully tragic ending. And speaking of annihilationism, the ultimate ending of The Good Place is a fucking drag. When the humans are first let in, they have a conversation with Lisa Kudrow's character in a very expensive courtyard. She is drinking one of her endless milkshakes and pissing into her pants, which dry immediately. And my main question there is, why do you still need to pee in any afterlife at all? Why do you still need to pee in heaven? Beats me. But also, I had enough conversations about the logistics of heaven back when I was young and went to church, and, I tried to ask my peers, what they all thought heaven was like, and I got really, technical about it. I was like, but the Bible says this, but we all think this. Nobody wanted to talk about it with me at the end of the day. They all got really, really sick of that conversation for some reason. I don't know. This conversation that Eleanor and Chidi have with Lisa Kudrow's character is, in a phrase, out of touch. The problem with heaven is that everything is good and nice all the time, and that's bad because people take it for granted.
On paper, this is paradise. All your desires and needs are met, but it's infinite. And when perfection goes on forever, you become this glassy-eyed mush person.
Okay, I'm just gonna be honest. It just feels like when rich people tell poor people that, money doesn't buy happiness. There's so many other things that you could make, a problem with heaven. The people up there not caring about the people in hell. Maybe the people up there being, classist toward the people in hell. Maybe the people in heaven thinking that the people in hell are deserving of being down there, Maybe it could have dealt with something like that. But no, it's just if you have things nice all the time, you're gonna hate it. That's the message. And I just think that's really lame. Not only, all of their needs are always met every day all the time, but they have access to education and fun and all of this stuff. Yeah, okay, I guess boredom is a fair price for not having to struggle. But maybe that's the lesson that I need to learn to avoid the bad place, is that I should be grateful in times of struggle. That's on us. That's our fault. Anyway, their lives are so full and so good and so nice that the solution that the cast comes up with when they eventually overthrow heaven and they come up with their ultimate final way to fix everything, they come up with a suicide door. Literally, you're just supposed to, your life is so good and so fulfilling that the only way to make you understand that is having the choice to kill yourself. You walk through it and you just cease to exist. If I didn't, if for some reason you're watching this and you haven't seen either show, Eleanor comes up with this door because the fucking stupid solution that she came up with was oh, the reason why heaven sucks so much is that there's no end to it. And it's like, okay, you just created, like, a second life. Like, why not just create the door? What, like, why bother with this, like, rehabilitation, like, middle ground? Like, if that's the goal, if simply ceasing to exist is, like, the end goal, then there's no reason to try to put humans through rehabilitation. Why not just make annihilation the end of life? Like, the nothing. Is that more morbid than individually having people choose to kill themselves? Is it any less sick and twisted to make people go through all of these hoops after death just to kill themselves anyway? And I don't really have an Amazing Digital Circus comparison to that part, obviously because the finale hasn't come out yet, but I just wanted to bitch about it because it's just so lame, and that finale just feels like it took a century too. I truly think it's my least favorite sitcom ending in sitcom history, and I'm including Friends. I feel kind of insulted that they felt like every single thread of every character needed to be tied up at the end. It was just so dragging on. It was a drag. Personally, for me, when a show ends, a lot of the fun comes from headcanoning the way that different characters' stories would have ended. As they say, imperfect endings are the fertile soil in which fandom grows. I just kind of don't like series finales in general. I will rarely, if ever, intentionally watch a series finale. And if I'm like binge watching like the last season of a show and it gets to the finale episode, I'm like, oh god, like no, like let's back to season 4. Or if I'm watching Community, season 3. I always find them disappointing in some way or another, and sometimes I even completely disregard them as canon. So I expect that even if the Amazing Digital Circus finale doesn't go the way that I expect it to or would like it to, ultimately I can just tell myself that's not canon and watch all of the episodes up until episode 9, as I do with most shows anyway. I will probably be much more pleased with the finale of the Amazing Digital Circus if it doesn't try to tie everything up, because then that leaves a lot more for me to work with as somebody who loves to write fanfiction. So since Pomni is the protagonist of the Amazing Digital Circus, I will be also comparing her to Eleanor in sort of a similar way to Jax. In both of these stories, Eleanor and Pomni are supposed to be audience proxies of a sort. A lot of protagonists are supposed to be like this, a lot like a reader insert. You are supposed to find them relatable enough to want to grow alongside. Now I know what you're thinking. Jack, not all protagonists are meant to be sympathetic. Nobody's supposed to relate to Walter White. And while you're right, that's not really the point of Eleanor. And to be honest, I don't even find Pomni personally all that relatable, but a lot of people do see themselves in her in a very deep way.
I am just being here.
And I can recognize her relatability because I know people like Pomni. She reacts in realistic and consistent ways to things that are freaking her out. She feels guilty for leaving Ragatha for the exit, and she talks Gangle through her feelings outside of Spudsies even when she doesn't really have the emotional bandwidth for it. She's realistically annoyed with Jax for all the fucked up stuff that he's done to her and other people.
You threw me out of a moving truck.
But there's a little part of her that feels like she can fix him. And given the amount of simps that Jax has, this is, safe to say, a really relatable reaction. Again, not me, y'all stay safe though. In comparison, Eleanor is sloppily built out of moments that are supposed to be relatable, but it's intermixed with truly cartoonish displays of evil, like selling fake drugs to old people. And like I said before, a lot of her other relatable traits are often framed as something negative. I think a much better example of a relatable anti-hero as a protagonist is Rick Sanchez. He does fucked up stuff, but he also has his limits.
Kill this Nazi prick!
His dislikable traits are congruent with the rest of who he is, and he has a lot of traits that are not necessarily usually framed as desirable, but ultimately harmless. And he's actually committed to improve, not because of being forced into philosophy lectures at the risk of the eternal conscious torment of hell, but because he realizes that his dysfunction is hurting his family. He doesn't immediately embrace the idea of improvement, but rather has a realistic struggle with his old patterns and tries to work it out in therapy.
I have no doubt that you would be bored senseless by therapy, the same way I'm bored when I brush my teeth and wipe my ass. Because the thing about repairing, maintaining, and cleaning is, it's not an adventure. There's no way to do it so wrong you might die.
And that's just an example for me of the type of character that Eleanor could have been, but who feels like realistic. The discourse about Ragatha pisses me off to no end. You can't make me hate her. You can't make me see her as fake nice or manipulative, and I truly believe that if that's your take on the character, then you're a minor who still lives with your mom. Tahani, on the other hand, is very believably fake nice, and she is fake nice, but we're directed by the other characters to believe she's deeper than that. The problem is, she really isn't. She's lived her entire life as a spoiled rich girl and always compared to her little sister. But she's supposed to be, like, the more grounded one a little bit and, like, less talented. She truly is fake nice. We're told this. We're led to believe it. It is confirmed, and it's just proven over and over again. It's played for laughs over and over again, which, fine. But we're supposed to buy that she has this deep, caring relationship with other people. But it's just not reality. Everything about her is incredibly selfish and shallow and based on her self-image even after death.
Being forced to wear a knockoff handbag and drink tap water.
That's what you think hell is?
Ugh.
It's going to destroy the integrity of the experiment, Your Honor.
Plus, now I have to live next to a man who once lied and said I wasn't at Didi's white party. I was there, Eleanor, I was. You must believe me.
And she does not get a lot better. Like, we're told by the other characters and that she does, but my ear is ringing. Her goodness test was about not listening to people talking about her. How shallow of a goodness test is that? Like, the purpose of her character is for Eleanor to just accept her fake politeness as a way to improve Eleanor. There's no real lasting character development for Tahani in a lot of ways for her shallow, social climbing, rich girl personality. Actually, the main character flaws that Tahani is supposed to overcome is forgiving her parents for neglecting her and not being jealous of her sister. Those are the character flaws that are honed in on the most. They do cursory stuff about her being shallow and a social climber and being fake, but none of those things are given nearly the same gravity as, oh, you better forgive your neglectful parents. Once again with this show, in comparison, we have Ragatha. The characters tell us that she's fake nice.
Doesn't she get on your nerves sometimes?
I mean, she's nice to everyone.
I don't know. I think she tries way too hard.
Oh, Ragatha. I love her, but after a while it gets kinda hard to tell how genuine she's actually being.
I could not disagree with this panel more.
And the narrative shows us signs of somebody who is simply a people pleaser. She isn't being fake nice to uphold some sort of image or status or to impress the others. She simply chooses to keep her head up and feels a protective obligation to share that energy with the people around her. I've seen people call this self-preserving on her part, but I don't really think that it is. She's not preserving herself at all when she's glitching out and tells Pomni, I understand if you don't want to help me. That's not her being self-preserving at all. That is not fake nice. And I think actually that point, as I'm saying it right there, not the point I was coming up to, but the specific example of glitching out, and that not being fake nice, I think I heard that from Tunish's analysis about Jackson Ragatha.
And this wasn't an act. This was a clear reflection of Ragatha's people-pleasing nature. I'm sure that she didn't want to be so calm and gentle in this situation. I'm sure that deep down, Ragatha wanted Pomni to save her, not run away. I mean, she literally said herself later in the episode that she was in so much pain. So it wouldn't make sense that she was pretending to be kind in this moment. She just is kind by nature due to her trauma.
Which I really, really love, so I'll link it because I mentioned it. But ultimately, she believes in being selfless and kind because she just doesn't want others to be hurt. And when you compare that to Tahani, well, Tahani is literally always just thinking about herself and her own status.
You're both helping Jianyu to regain his confidence to be able to speak again as a surprise from me.
Oh, busted.
My heart is soaring.
And her niceness toward others really is just motivated in them thinking that she's nice. Ragatha also comes from a wealthy family, and she never once flaunts or leverages this. The only moment she even brings it up is in the bar, and she quickly interrupts herself because she doesn't want to make the others uncomfortable. She doesn't brag about the horses, she wistfully misses them. She doesn't flaunt any wealth, she doesn't try to explain who her parents really were, aside from the way that her mother treated her. And the thing is that both characters are believable, but in different ways. Tahani is comparable to, say, an out-of-touch influencer, and we are constantly told to just deal with that and accept her anyway. Ragatha is more like a rich friend who grew up rich but feels embarrassed about it, blend in and have real friends with people that she connects with. She never brings it up again. And to wrap up with these two characters, I want to briefly compare the moments when Eleanor / Pomni appreciated Tahani / Ragatha for their intentions. In The Good Place, we are meant to see Eleanor clocking Tahani's fakeness as a moral failure. We are supposed to accept Tahani being fake because she's not directly trying to do something mean. So, despite Eleanor being kind of right about Tahani, not that she has it out to get her, but that she's fake nice, Eleanor is still meant to be the one to bridge that gap. And the other thing that I know I wrote somewhere, but it's not here in the document. It was the end of The Mystery of Mildenhall Manor when Pomni goes up to Ragatha and she tells her she appreciates her for, caring how she's doing.
Ragatha.
Yeah?
I just want to say thanks for always being concerned about me. I feel like through everything, I haven't really been appreciative enough about that.
Oh, thank you, Pomni.
I just think that's a much cleaner way to deal with that kind of thing. Because Pomni had pretty much only until that point been told by Jax that Ragatha was like fake. And she was just kind of wary of her. Pomni's flaw was that she wasn't trusting enough of these people. This is where she evolves on that, is that she recognizes where Ragatha's coming from. Ragatha was not being fake, and the lesson there isn't accept people when they're being fake. The lesson is appreciate your friends. That was my takeaway. This comparison is going to be a little bit more direct because Caine and Michael both serve sort of the same narrative function. They're both the antagonist characters. Sort of. They are both the gods of their respective existential sandboxes. They both love the quirks of humanity in their own different ways, and they both have their hands tied when it comes to giving the humans what they want. I know Ted Danson's shoulders are sore from carrying the entire fucking show. Michael is a character who makes very little sense. He's a demon who has decided to run his own torture experiment, right? Who is emotionally broken down by a random human, and he becomes one of the good guys because he has a midlife crisis. This eliminates the friction between the good guys and the person who was supposed to be our antagonist. While he was still the antagonist, he was cartoonishly evil, which was his motivation behind him torturing the humans in an artificial reality, indefinitely. Once he's on their side, it's irrelevant. The humans are no longer being tortured, but chased. The antagonist becomes the system of the afterlife itself, which is its own conversation. And in theory, I don't think that's the worst creative choice, but it sort of muddles the driving motivations behind everyone in the show, and it begins to constantly shift the goalposts of what the characters must do to achieve salvation. In comparison, Caine remains the antagonist the entire time, but he loves the humans the entire time. He desperately wants to connect with them. His eternal torture of the humans is not motivated by malice, but by the existential horror of the fact that he cannot understand their needs. He sees himself as being on their side, but they see him as a threat.
I do not use my adventures to torture my guests! Any torment I inflict is 100% accidental, like any good war criminal!
The characters reacting like this to Caine, while the audience can clearly see that he's lonely, is what makes the audience root for him. We root for Michael because, well, he's Ted Danson. We must explicitly be told he's on their side now. The friction must shift because the human suffering doesn't actually exist anymore. The plot must now become a ticking time bomb to somehow change the system before they all receive eternal damnation. As a result, the following seasons become increasingly convoluted.
You look convoluted!
And ultimately forgettable. Now, I know it's kind of low-hanging fruit to compare the two non-binary characters, but I do want to say something about it. I do want to give praise to both shows here. Janet is kind of a revolutionary character. Revolutionary? Janet was a bold character choice for its era to be running on network television. She explicitly, consistently asserts that despite the she-her pronouns, she is not a girl and not a robot.
And to Janet, The best robot.
Not a robot.
Girl.
Not a girl.
And straight up hottie.
I am attractive, yes.
And it's not just a throwaway, it's a consistent trait about her to the point where the which clone is which dilemma is solved when the evil clone of her accepts being referred to as a girl.
I call Janet girl, but she didn't say not a girl. The real Janet always says, not a girl.
Jason loves her and marries her as she is.
Looks good, not a girl.
And it never inspires her to suddenly start identifying as a girl. And I think that that's lovely. I think that that's a really good thing to have on like a primetime network television show. Now, Zooble is implicitly non-binary because they use they-them pronouns. Now, yes, I do know that Gooseworks herself has said that Zooble uses any-all pronouns, but it's extremely important to me that in the show, every character simply refers to them as they-them. Even Caine.
I made this adventure really cool and mature, just for them.
It doesn't break his logic. Even Jax doesn't act confused or dickish about it. We never even have a scene where Kinger is too old to understand what that is. Nobody ever addresses it. They all just use they-them pronouns for Zooble. It's never a problem. It's never confusing. And it's never made a soapbox moment in the show. Unequivocally, having a main character who uses they-them pronouns and is not made a spectacle, but is just accepted, is groundbreaking, and something I wish that Disney had had the balls to do with Soul, with the character 22. Not because I think every non-binary person needs to go by they-them pronouns, but because I think it's fucking Disney Pixar. Puritans boycott every new film they come out with, regardless, and they're doing just fine. Anyway, The Good Place did a great job here, so did the Digital Circus. Disney did not. Disney did terrible, and Disney loses negative 42069 points. Not loses negative, gains negative points. So when I was like drawing, like physically drawing in my notebook about like matching characters up together, Chidi and Gangle were just kind of leftovers, and I wasn't really gonna, I was gonna leave them out. But again, I found a way to shed light on how each show handles a similar theme, the theme of sensitivity. The Good Place could not be more clear on how it regards Chidi being so sensitive to doing the right thing. It's bad. It manifests solely as being indecisive to the point that it hurts the people around him and eventually kills him. This is an incredibly callous take for how insightful it's trying to be. Indecisiveness is definitely a symptom of anxiety, which Chidi clearly suffers from, to the point of getting actual stomach aches, even in the afterlife. And these stomach aches are always played for laughs, instead of taking a moment to educate the audience on the very real physical consequences of having untreated anxiety. The weird thing is, just like Eleanor, nobody for Chidi's entire life has suggested he go to therapy for his anxiety. They just complain about his indecisiveness like it's a parasite unto them until they finally have had enough and cut him off for having anxiety. That's really fucked up. Even in the afterlife, he's afflicted by indecisiveness and stomach cramps because of his existential anxiety. And it's still not even really handled consistently. The plot treats Chidi's knowledge of morality as correct, absolute, and in line with the auditing system of the universe.
Fine, but there's something called the doctrine of double effect. In order to remain ethical, you can't just go into this with the intention of killing Derek.
And yet, him trying to do the right thing all the time is his character flaw. It's something he's supposed to overcome.
Well, hang on, let me think about that.
No!
Because
No more thinking, Chidi.
I know that Chidi is supposed to represent a character that speaks to somebody like me, but he's arguably the most mean-spirited caricature in the entire show. Gangle, however, is simply allowed to exist as sensitive. It's not a character flaw. It makes Jax more of an asshole for fucking with her constantly. Her sadness is not a hindrance to anybody at any time, and the rest of the cast defend her from Jax, rather than ever telling her to toughen up. The person who's the hardest on her is herself. She's the only one who explicitly refers to her constant sadness as a flaw. Gangle is the only one who keeps that cursed plastic Spudsies mask on, forcing herself to be happy, and it actually irritates everybody that she is so aggressively cheery. In They All Get Guns, Gangle refers to her emotionality as something that makes her worse than everyone else. And Zooble directly tells her that it doesn't. It's a part of her she needs to accept. And later in the episode, when she gets to fire the Tommy gun, her tragedy mask is still smiling with the tears. In Untitled, when Jax asks if Gangle is capable of happiness, both Pomni and Ragatha call him out for being rude.
Do you think Gangle is actually capable of being happy?
What? Maybe. She just doesn't want to hang out with someone who's mean to her all the time.
And we, the audience, can clearly see that she's capable of happiness. Just look at her during the anime scene, or when Zooble offers to draw with her, or when she's firing the Tommy gun. There's so many scenes where Gangle isn't just sad. She just always is a little sad as well. Like, even the line where she asks why she doesn't get an evil clone, you know? Like, she's just like, hey, like, hello? Like, you know, that's not like a super sad moment, but she's just like, I want an evil clone. And it shows her depth of character. And again, her being sensitive is never, ever framed as some sort of burden to the people around her. And I don't think I have to speak more on this comparison, to be honest. These two shows want us to view sensitivity in starkly different ways. This is the harshest comparison because Chidi let me down so much, and Gangle, honestly, is my favorite character. Kind of. I'm gonna go off script for this moment here because I just want to make it clear. I've said both about Chidi and Eleanor that, you know, nobody told them to go to therapy. I understand that in Chidi's lore, he was taken to see specialists at a very young age. First of all, I think that is very, very different than going to a therapist as an adult. And second of all, when I say, oh, you know, why didn't their friends ever tell them to go to therapy? I hear you already before you even say it. I hear you. I get it. Not everybody. Therapy's hard. It's hard. It's hard to go and find the help that you need. It's hard to be educated on the help that you need. It's hard to find somebody who will work with you in the way that you need it. But good friends don't just stop at, hey, you should go to therapy. You know, that's the start. That's my problem with it, with Chidi and Eleanor's friends not doing that, right? Hey, dude, like, you have struggled with, like, anxiety, panic, OCD, rumination OCD, probably, like, you know, your whole life. Why don't we take you to see a therapist? And if that's too hard for you, then what can we do next? Because I'm your friend. I just think it's really sick that Uzo, who has been Chidi's friend since elementary school, puts Chidi through a relationship test where he fakes making him his best man for his wedding. It's so... I pray that friendship never finds me, and I've had pretty bad friends. And I also have been a bad friend, but I have never... I've never had somebody do this to me. I'm not going to go off on a whole other ramble, but I just wanted to add that in there because I know I'm going to get comments saying, like, well, especially... He didn't go see therapists as an adult, and furthermore, his best friend who he's had his entire life has not encouraged him to go on a mental health journey. He just tries to shame him into making decisions. And that's the solution for Chidi the whole time. Shame him into making decisions because it aggravates everybody around him when he can't make decisions. So, just like the last set, I wasn't initially gonna pair these two characters together because I felt like it was just kind of like, they don't really have all that much in common, but again, I found out that they kind of do. Jianyu is one of the things that I think The Good Place did exceptionally well. His reveal is a great shock humor moment, and one of the more talked about story beats when people talk about their love of the show. Jason Mendoza is a party-brained Floridian with questionable judgment skills, but he's introduced to the audience and the characters as a silent monk named Jianyu. While he is Jianyu, characters project their own internal conflicts and insight onto him, convincing themselves that he is wise when he is simply silent. The eventual reveal that he is just some guy, and that you probably should never take advice from him, is an intentional and direct parody of that projection, and particularly of the Orientalism of assuming that Asians are wise, and that there's also that part about Jason is Filipino.
And by the way, everyone here thinks I'm Taiwanese. I'm Filipino. That's racist. Heaven is so racist.
And then even the quote-unquote real Jianyu is revealed to have stopped learning at the age of 7.
And when you died at that exact same moment, our system mistook you for him. Perhaps because you share the exact same IQ.
Cool.
No, not cool. He stopped learning at the age of 7.
So it's not painted as like a thing that like it really is fully subverted, the whole thing about monks being like super wise, thing about like the quiet person being wise. In contrast, Hinger is another play on the silent wisdom trope. He is not silent, he does not have a calming presence. Instead, he has been mentally broken by the 30 years that he has been trapped in the digital circus. Nobody looks to him for leadership or wisdom until the moments where he slowly becomes lucid and reveals hidden depths. And again, I think both of these characters handled this trope subversion pretty well. Jason disrupts the idea that silence insinuates wisdom, and Kinger sheds light on the reality that people who struggle mentally are still humans with agency and carry the wisdom of their lived experiences. There are more issues that I have with the way that Jason is portrayed as stupid in the show, but this video isn't about character backstories. We have very limited knowledge on the backstories of the digital circus characters. One thing I will mention is the way that this show treats EDM, the way that the aughts treated rap, I just think that that's a little bit silly goofy. I think that's a little bit funny. It's not as serious as some of the other ways that Jason is portrayed as dumb, but I do think it's really funny how much the show just like rips into EDM, and I don't know how well that aged.
That's not music. That's EDM.
Written isn't music. I prefer Taylor Swift.
Okay, stick with me here because this is actually the first character comparison that I thought of. Derek and Gummigoo don't really serve the same narrative function, but they share similar character design in terms of not really archetype, but the way that they fit in to their respective false realities. Derek is a fake human created by Janet as a rebound after Jason marries someone else. Essentially, he's a sentient NPC. His existence is horrific, but it's also comedic relief. His feelings don't matter, because he's not a real human. He's as discardable as a human rebound, I guess. I don't know. That's how I kind of read that sort of thing. I feel like the concept of a rebound is so often reduced to the rebounder's point of view, and that's the joke here. Derek isn't good enough for Janet because he's not Jason, and that is supposedly enough to warrant using him as a punching bag.
How many times has Mindy rebooted you?
I don't know. 500,000?
What?
She reboots me a lot. Sometimes when she's bored or just needs some alone time. Sometimes just for laughs. Derek.
Gummigoo is an advanced AI NPC created by Caine to make the adventures more immersive. He's given memories of an entire lifetime to make his motivations as the adventure's antagonist more realistic. He isn't stealing syrup from Candy Canyon Kingdom because the adventure plot demands it. Caine gave him a sick mother that he has to take care of. Caine gave him friends. And when Gummigoo no-clips into the asset room, he is immediately faced with the existential weight that his existence is made up. He is an entity designed to just be an antagonist and then disappear. The knowledge hits him like a tanker, and he loses the will to go on. This moment is a tool to show us Pomni's empathy, as well as the human tendency to anthropomorphize anything. And I would have done the same thing. In the digital circus, Gummigoo is functionally as real as the other humans, as far as we know. We're supposed to sit in the existential dread with him. We're supposed to empathize with what it feels like to feel like your reality is meaningless. Your life has the meaning that you give it. We are meant to see this NPC as a person.
Why are you trying to cheer me up? How does this benefit you at all?
I guess I just don't want you to feel like you're nothing. I don't want anybody to feel like that.
Which is what makes it so devastating when Caine deletes him. Now, again, Derek and Gummigoo serve different narrative functions. Derek is a cameo and a gag, and Gummigoo is part of the Amazing Digital Circus's overarching conversation about what makes us human. Derek isn't necessarily a flaw of The Good Place, but I just think that it's interesting the way that the two shows handle the treatment of outsiders. In The Good Place, really the only people who matter are the main cast, and having empathy for Derek is not necessary. In the Amazing Digital Circus, the character of the humans is partially informed by the way that they treat the NPCs, despite knowing the NPCs won't even remember them later. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Mindy. Mindy's not good in her afterlife, and she was not good on Earth. She caused a lot of harm, and she doesn't bring it up with really a shred of empathy. It's mostly to brag about her situation. How she was able to be absolutely evil and hedonistic on Earth, throw a Hail Mary at the end of her life, and balance all her points out enough to get a medium place. Mindy exposes a glaring flaw in the point system, but not the way the creators of the show intended. This is a clue that the point system is broken. The thing that nags me in particular about Mindy's story is all of the posthumous points that she earned because her sister set up a charity in her name. I'm pretty sure all of those points belong to her sister. Like, what are we doing here? The infallible point system has assigned points to somebody who's already dead. It's already been established you can't earn extra points after you're dead. I think that's indefensible, to be honest. I think that's theft. And it leads me into the next point. The point system is broken. This is something the cast learns when they head to accounting. The accountants reveal nobody has been eligible for the good place since the Renaissance. And I will give the show plus 521 points for acknowledging that there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, but I'm going to take those points immediately away for this next part. Because what did the humans do when they make this revelation? They attempt to convince Neil the accountant to take another look at the system, and he responds just by doubling down on how it's infallible. It's completely circular logic. So what did the gang do when faced with this quandary? Do they try harder to make the accountant see reason? Do they ask who exactly assigned all these point values? Do they teach him about Aristotle? Do they perhaps suggest an accountant or two head down to Earth to check out how humans live complex lives the way that they did with the judge? No. They run away on foot. Wheatley is never held accountable. Explain how that makes sense. It's not adding up, just like the point system, and the accountants are right there, and we're not holding them accountable. Hello? I truly thought we would get to confront whoever made up these stupid point values in the first place. But no. The points are just the points, and the accountants add them together. They simply account for the numbers. And yet, we are to presume there was no being that made up these objective point values. We must assume, therefore, that the accountants are the ones in charge of coming up with those point values, the individual ones that they end up adding up once they're all accrued. This office should be their battleground right now. It makes no sense to pivot and go to the judge, who, by the way, is so out of touch with humanity that she didn't even know racism was a thing.
Also, I guess I'm black, and they do not like black ladies down there.
Let me say that again. The judge of all of humanity, all of human morality, who is supposed to be the final word on whether the point values are fair, asterisk, did not know racism existed. And on that last point, about her role in the afterlife, it just doesn't make sense. The mere existence of a judge completely contradicts any claim that the point system is objective. If it truly were objective, there would be no need for a judge to decide anything. The points simply are. The accountants treat them as infallible. And all of it is just such, like a massive, it's just, can you see? Do you understand? Do you see my vision? Do you see what's happening? Do you see what's going on here? I believe we're almost done, and it's not even 4 a.m. It's only 3:37. The concept of Doug Forcett as a happiness pump within the context of utilitarianism is incredibly cynical, in my opinion. This was another classroom moment for the TV show to just tell us just what a happiness pump is, but it's just accepted at face value that that happiness pump does in fact factor into the overall points mechanic. This show has always blown smoke up its own ass for being so smart and philosophical, but it does this by trying to force all philosophies to exist as the same universal truth. And this just simply doesn't make sense. I'm not a philosopher, but even from my limited understanding of philosophy, a good number of philosophies directly contradict each other. In fact, that's the point of debating philosophy. Is it not? Isn't it? I don't know. The show is obsessed with Kant and Kantian ethics, which assigns certain actions as intrinsically wrong, and it cancels out the utilitarian view that morality is based on the outcome of the action. Chidi and the show are also obsessed with Aristotle's virtue ethics, which brings it down to a person's character and their intent, something that the show also does explore and talk about, and yet the point system is largely utilitarian, but with certain random points pulled from these other philosophies. The points wouldn't be objective if Aristotle was right, but we are supposed to believe that the things that Chidi believes about ethics are correct. And all of this could have been a fascinating discussion for the characters to have with each other, rather than Chidi, like, preaching it from a blackboard. Or at the very least, with the accountants. Chidi should have been giving those lectures to the accountants. I don't think the show is philosophically clever, and I'm sorry if that hurts anybody's feelings, but I'm sure that Michael Schur is too successful to give a fuck, so I think I'm safe. I think this show is incredibly self-relating, and I'm so relieved to finally be getting my point across, so I never have to think about it again. Okay, as I was getting clips, I accidentally stumbled onto another massive fumble of The Good Place. Derek? He's reset by Mindy 151 million times. And I quote,
Derek is now both a singular point in space, and yet Derek also contains space itself. The nexus of Derek is without dimension. The moment of Derek's creation and the eventual heat death of the universe are now inexorably the same.
Hello? Is anybody else thinking what I'm thinking? Is it obvious? Why not use Derek to reset the point values? Why not use Derek to abolish the afterlife prison system? Why not use Derek to retcon the entirety of reality and make it so that the demons never needed to torture people? But Jack, if that happened, the show would end. Yeah, I sure hope it does. He literally has infinite cosmic power, but it's just a joke. A gag. Of course Derek can't be the solution. We can't just abolish prison. We have to punish the bad people. We will simply make it a nicer prison. A rehabilitative prison. Don't think about how the accountants and the demons came into being. Don't think about how they're exempt from the morality system. Don't ask where their moral ledgers are.
Maybe there's a mega demon who built a torture chamber for demons, and this whole thing is just him torturing you. And maybe all the mega demons are just fulfilling a destiny laid out by a bunch of super intelligent tarantula squids who are torturing them.
Bofa, these nuts. Don't worry about that. Oh, and certainly don't worry about the judge, whose name is Hydrogen because that was the only thing in existence when she came to be, and yet her entire purpose of being is to judge humans who came, billions of years later? Trillions of years later? How old is the universe? That's the problem, right? When did humans come on the scene? If you know the calendar, if you remember the calendar, mnemonic, whatever, we're December. We're like at the 11th hour of December. That's when humanity came onto the scene, at the very, very, very end of the calendar. So all of that time, Judge Jen has existed just waiting around to put Cholula on Mexican food and judge humanity. Don't question the system. Just make it a cushier system. And by the way, it's also the U.S. judicial system. The universe's moral enforcement is the U.S. judicial system and abusive correctional officers. Don't worry about that, though. Don't worry about it. The only thing you need to worry about is building a better prison. And I don't have a digital circus comparison for those last 3 points. Just like way back there, it's just been weighing on me. Like, the point system is the fundamentally most broken part of the entire show, and the philosophy seems pretty broken to me as well. Now, what's my takeaway from all this? Is it that I'm actually a cool guy with cool hobbies and not that much different from you, beautiful humans? Look, I understand the shows are very, very different. One was an incredibly popular primetime network show, and the other an incredibly popular indie web series. One is about the metaphysical afterlife, and the other is about a digital reality that may or may not be some sort of afterlife. Hopefully by this point, you can see where the themes and goals in the show overlap. If you can't, I've done a terrible job. Both shows have a similar theme that is not that subtle: learning how to be a better human. The Good Place is heavy-handed and upfront with its motivation, confidently posturing itself as an enlightened philosophical conversation, and incidentally kind of talking down to its audience. The Amazing Digital Circus is a wacky dark humor cartoon, but it doesn't hide the fact that it wants its audience to reflect on trauma, empathy, community, and self-love. It doesn't have to give us lectures on Plato or Kant, or give us a reading list to instruct us to be better. It empathizes with us. It inspires us to be better.
I know how I can feel in this circus. Sometimes it all just feels pointless, but it's not. Not if you have people who care about you. Good memories can do a lot. Hold on to them and cherish the people around you.
Let's compare a couple of quotes here. I'm going to start with the judge. When she's scolding Eleanor for only wanting to do good to avoid the bad place.
The point is, we've all gotten better. Why should we have to go live alone in a boring void because of a messed up system? How is that justice?
Okay, I still believe that the only reason that you improved in Michael's fake neighborhood is because you thought there was a reward. You're supposed to do good things because you're good.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Not because you're seeking moral desert.
First of all, not only is this circular logic, but there shouldn't even be a moral desert. This line is so close to getting the point. This objective afterlife system is clearly negotiable and not objective, and yet they never bother to change the confines that demand the system in the first place. It very puritanically insists that if you do good things but the reason behind doing good is selfish, then the goodness doesn't matter, and you should feel selfish for wanting to do good, just because you did it out of fear, or moral desert. This line by Gangle, on the other hand, strips away the shame, instead appealing to empathy.
He's right, though.
What? Gangle?
It doesn't matter what could have happened. We could argue about it and hurt each other all day long, but that's not gonna help anybody. I think what we need to do now is to just be there for each other.
The Good Place tries so hard to be something that it isn't. It tries to convince us that it follows the philosophy laid out in Scanlan's What We Owe to Each Other. It's basically the holy book of the series, and yet the series entirely misses the point of the text that it references. Scanlan's core argument is that wrongness is based on principles others could reasonably reject. People, by the way, not accountants in some celestial afterlife, or a cosmic judge, and certainly not a utilitarian points system. The book focuses on the collaborative humanity of it all, not fixed rules on what's definitively good or what's definitively bad, and that would have been such a better conversation. The characters in the Digital Circus don't even need to touch a book to get there. Nobody is guaranteed to avoid abstraction just by being a good person. Jax cannot be forced by a higher power to be a good person. He is instead routinely offered a hand from the others in his community. And he rejects it not out of an innate sense of badness, but because he's not ready to be a participant in the community. The Amazing Digital Circus shows us, time and time again, that what we owe to each other is understanding, forgiveness, and presence. Ultimately, I don't care if people want to watch The Good Place. I'll probably still recommend it to people sometimes. You know, it's a good show. It was a cultural touchstone, and it's not like it's majorly problematic or a steaming pile of garbage.
I could not disagree with this panel more.
I just expected more from it. I care this much because I wanted to be excited about it. I saw the potential in what it could have been. But now the Amazing Digital Circus has finally begun to heal that part of me. I can't wait for the finale to make a complete fool out of me when it's revealed that the humans can actually escape and there's stasis pods. We're finally done. That's cool. That's cool. I had a blast writing this. I really had and have so much to say, but I think I was finally able to get out just the amount that I needed to about these shows. It was enlightening rewatching certain scenes of The Good Place and getting even more pissed off than I was the first time. I plan to do more TV show analysis. I want to talk more about The Amazing Digital Circus, obviously, a little bit more, but I'm going to start kind of doing more analyses of like shows and TV episodes. So if that's something you want to see from me, consider subscribing. I'm open to suggestions on topics, but I'll be real, I actually have like a backlog of ideas already, and I'm excited to get started with it, and I just ordered some contacts, so we won't have to deal with the glare as much in the future. Yeah, thanks for watching if you did.